Sarah lived on the edge of Harmony Creek, both physically and socially. Her small, weathered cottage sat just beyond the last row of neatly painted houses, mirroring her own position on the fringes of town life. She wasn't invited to the potlucks at the church, and the friendly waves she offered were often met with averted eyes and tight-lipped smiles. It wasn't always this way. Once, Sarah had been a bright, lively girl, dreaming of a future filled with laughter and friends. But a mistake, a youthful indiscretion that had been blown out of proportion by wagging tongues, had changed everything. Now, the weight of the town's judgment hung heavy around her shoulders, a constant reminder of her perceived failings. She spent her days tending her small garden, finding solace in the quiet rhythm of planting and weeding. The flowers, with their vibrant colors and silent beauty, were her only companions. Evenings were spent reading by the dim light of a kerosene lamp, lost in stories of faraway places and second chances. She longed for a fresh start, a place where her past wouldn't define her, but Harmony Creek held her captive, a prisoner of its own small-town mentality. She felt as though her heart was lonely and wanted to be loved. Harmony Creek was a place where everyone knew everyone else's business. It was a town built on tradition, where families had lived and worked the land for generations. The townsfolk valued loyalty, hard work, and above all, a clean reputation. Gossip traveled faster than the wind through the cornfields, and once a story took root, it was nearly impossible to uproot it. The town square, with its towering oak tree and weathered benches, was the heart of Harmony Creek. It was where farmers gathered to discuss crops and weather, where children played tag after school, and where the ladies exchanged the latest news over cups of coffee. But for Sarah, the town square was a place of quiet dread. She avoided it whenever possible, knowing that her presence would be met with whispers and sideways glances. The annual Harmony Creek Harvest Festival was the highlight of the year, a celebration of the community's bounty and togetherness. But Sarah hadn't attended in years. The thought of facing the judgmental eyes of the townspeople was too much to bear. She knew that behind the smiles and cheerful greetings, there would always be a silent condemnation, a constant reminder that she didn't belong. She preferred the quiet solitude of her garden, where she could be herself, free from the scrutiny of Harmony Creek. It had happened when Sarah was barely 17. A summer romance with a traveling musician, a boy with a guitar and a charming smile. He promised her the world, a life beyond the confines of Harmony Creek. She'd been swept away by his words, by the idea of adventure. One night, after a town dance, they'd run off together. It only lasted a week. He'd left her stranded in a nearby town, with empty pockets and a broken heart. When she returned to Harmony Creek, she was no longer seen as an innocent girl. The whispers started immediately, growing louder and more distorted with each retelling. Some said she'd been reckless and foolish. Others claimed she'd brought shame upon her family. The most vicious rumors hinted at things that never happened, painting her as someone she wasn't. Her parents tried to defend her, but the damage was done. The town had made up its mind. The musician had long since disappeared, forgotten by everyone except Sarah. His memory was a bittersweet ache in her heart, a reminder of her youthful naivete and the price she'd paid for it. Even though she had returned to her parents and tried to live a good life, the town never really forgave her for running away with him. The whispers and the cold shoulders continued, a constant reminder of her past. This event would forever mark her time in the little town. Jedediah arrived in Harmony Creek with a truck full of dreams and a heart full of hope. He'd inherited his uncle's old ranch, a sprawling property just outside of town, and he was determined to bring it back to life. He wasn't interested in the town's gossip or its petty squabbles. He was a man of the land, focused on hard work and honest living. He was tall and weathered, with kind eyes and a strong jaw. His hands were calloused from years of working outdoors, and his smile was as warm as the summer sun. He wasn't looking for romance, but he was hoping to find good, reliable people to help him run the ranch. He needed someone who wasn't afraid of hard work, someone who understood the land, and someone he could trust. Jedediah had heard the whispers about Sarah, of course. The town made sure everyone knew her story. But he didn't pay them much mind. He believed in giving people a chance, in judging them by their actions, not their past. He figured that if she was still living in Harmony Creek after all these years, she must have some grit and determination. He wanted to find honest people, and he wouldn't let gossip get in the way. Jedediah was riding his horse along the creek one afternoon when he saw her. Sarah was kneeling beside the water, gently tending to a small bird with a broken wing. He watched from a distance, impressed by her gentle touch and the care she showed the injured creature. The bird chirped softly as she splinted its wing with twigs and a piece of cloth. He dismounted and approached her slowly, not wanting to startle her or the bird. "That's a kind thing you're doing," he said, his voice soft and respectful. Sarah looked up, startled. She recognized him as the new rancher, Jedediah. A blush crept up her neck as she realized she was being watched. "It's just a little bird," she mumbled, avoiding his gaze. "Even little things deserve kindness," Jedediah replied with a warm smile. "I'm Jedediah, by the way." "Sarah," she said quietly, her eyes still fixed on the bird. He noticed the way she handled the bird with such tenderness, her brow furrowed in concentration. It was clear she had a gentle heart, a stark contrast to the stories he'd heard. This encounter was the first step in seeing who she truly was. "You have a way with animals," Jedediah added, genuinely impressed. Sarah finally met his gaze, a flicker of surprise in her eyes. "I just try to help where I can," she said softly. The next day, Jedediah rode up to Sarah's cottage. He found her tending her garden, her hands covered in soil. He dismounted and approached the fence, his hat in his hand. "Sarah," he began, "I'm looking for someone to help me out on the ranch. I need someone who's not afraid of hard work and who knows their way around animals. I saw you with that bird yesterday, and I was wondering if you'd be interested." Sarah's eyes widened in surprise. She couldn't believe that Jedediah, the new rancher, was offering her a job. Especially after everything he must have heard about her. I don't know what to say," she stammered. "I've never worked on a ranch before." "You've got a good heart, and that's more important than experience," Jedediah said with a reassuring smile. "I'm willing to teach you everything you need to know." The news spread through Harmony Creek like wildfire. The townsfolk were shocked that Jedediah would even consider hiring Sarah, let alone trust her with his ranch. They whispered amongst themselves, predicting disaster. Martha, from the bakery, even went as far as to warn Jedediah that he was making a big mistake. But Jedediah stood firm. He trusted his instincts and believed that Sarah deserved a chance. He was set on making sure she had a job. Sarah arrived at the ranch early the next morning, her heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and fear. She wore her oldest clothes, her hands still trembling slightly as she approached the barn. Jedediah was already there, tending to the horses. He looked up and smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Morning, Sarah," he said warmly. "Ready to get to work?" Sarah nodded, trying to project an air of confidence she didn't feel. "Yes, sir," she replied. Jedediah showed her the ropes, patiently explaining each task and demonstrating the proper techniques. Sarah was a quick learner, eager to please and determined to prove herself. She cleaned the stables, fed the chickens, and helped mend fences, her initial nervousness gradually fading away as she immersed herself in the work. She discovered a natural aptitude for caring for the animals. The horses seemed to sense her gentle touch, and the cows followed her voice. Jedediah watched her, impressed by her dedication and her genuine connection with the land. The days passed quickly, filled with hard work and a growing sense of accomplishment. Sarah began to feel like she belonged, not just to the ranch, but to something bigger than herself. She was finding purpose, and a little bit of peace. The job helped her find herself. One evening, a fierce storm rolled in, bringing with it torrential rain and howling winds. The creek swelled rapidly, threatening to flood the lower pastures where the cattle were grazing. Jedediah was worried. He needed to move the cattle to higher ground, but the storm was making it nearly impossible. Sarah, without hesitation, grabbed her rain slicker and joined him. Together, they braved the elements, working tirelessly to herd the cattle to safety. The wind whipped at them, and the rain stung their faces, but they pressed on, their determination fueled by their concern for the animals. One of the cows, Old Bess, got stuck in the mud, unable to move. Jedediah tried to pull her out, but she was too heavy. Sarah, remembering something her grandfather had taught her, quickly fashioned a makeshift ramp out of wooden planks and guided Bess onto it, allowing her to escape the mud. Jedediah looked at Sarah, his eyes filled with admiration. "I don't know what I would have done without you," he said, his voice hoarse from shouting over the wind. Sarah smiled, her face flushed with exertion. "We did it together," she replied, feeling a surge of pride and gratitude. It was on this night that Jedediah fully realized the value of Sarah. She was more than just a hard worker, she was resourceful, brave, and deeply compassionate. He trusted her completely. This also grew them closer. As the weeks turned into months, Jedediah and Sarah found themselves drawn to each other. They spent their evenings sitting on the porch, watching the sunset and talking about their dreams. Jedediah shared his vision for the ranch, his desire to create a place where animals were treated with respect and the land was cherished. Sarah spoke of her longing for acceptance, her hope for a future where her past wouldn't define her. They discovered a shared love for the simple things in life, the smell of freshly cut hay, the sound of crickets chirping on a summer night, the warmth of a crackling fire on a cold winter evening. Jedediah was drawn to Sarah's kindness, her resilience, and her unwavering spirit. Sarah was drawn to Jedediah's strength, his honesty, and his genuine belief in her. One evening, as they sat side by side, watching the stars twinkle in the night sky, Jedediah gently took Sarah's hand in his. "Sarah," he said softly, "I've come to care for you a great deal. You're a special person, and I'm grateful to have you in my life." Sarah's heart fluttered. She looked into Jedediah's eyes and saw nothing but sincerity and affection. "I care for you too, Jedediah," she whispered, her voice filled with emotion. The two became closer with their time together. It was clear that there was love in the air. The townspeople of Harmony Creek watched Jedediah and Sarah's relationship with growing disapproval. The whispers grew louder, the stares more pointed. They couldn't understand why Jedediah, a respected newcomer, would choose to associate with someone like Sarah. Some openly criticized Jedediah, questioning his judgment and warning him that he was making a mistake. Others ostracized Sarah even further, spreading rumors and making her feel even more like an outcast. Martha, from the bakery, stopped serving her, claiming she was bad for business. Even some of Jedediah's new acquaintances began to distance themselves, fearing that his association with Sarah would tarnish their own reputations. The pressure mounted on both Jedediah and Sarah. Sarah felt guilty, worried that she was ruining Jedediah's chances of fitting in. She even considered leaving the ranch, thinking it would be best for him. Jedediah, however, refused to be swayed by the town's opinion. He knew what he felt for Sarah, and he wasn't going to let anyone, or anything, change that. He confronted some of the townspeople, defending Sarah and challenging their judgmental attitudes. "Sarah is a good person," he declared, "and I'm proud to call her my friend." His words, however, fell on deaf ears. The town had made up its mind, and they weren't about to change it. Their disapproval only grew. The annual Harmony Creek Town meeting was usually a dry affair, filled with discussions about budgets and road repairs. But this year, the atmosphere was charged with tension. Jedediah knew that the topic of Sarah would be raised, and he was prepared to defend her. As expected, Mrs. Higgins, the self-appointed moral compass of Harmony Creek, stood up and addressed the crowd. "We cannot stand by and allow this situation to continue," she declared, her voice dripping with disapproval. "Jedediah is a good man, but he's being led astray by a woman with a questionable past." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Jedediah stood up, his eyes blazing with anger. "Sarah is a kind, hard-working, and honest woman," he said, his voice ringing with conviction. "She deserves respect, not judgment. And I, for one, am proud to call her my friend, and more than a friend." He paused, taking Sarah's hand and looking directly at Mrs. Higgins. "I care deeply for Sarah," he announced, "and I will not tolerate anyone speaking ill of her. If that makes me an outcast in your eyes, then so be it." A gasp went through the crowd. Jedediah's bold declaration of love and support for Sarah was a challenge to everything Harmony Creek stood for. He had chosen Sarah over their approval, and in doing so, had become an outcast himself. He had sacrificed fitting in for her. Inspired by Jedediah's courage, Sarah decided she could no longer remain silent. She knew she had to confront her past and address the town's misconceptions, not just for Jedediah's sake, but for her own. The next day, she walked into the town square, a place she had avoided for years. Heads turned as she approached, whispers following her like a shadow. She walked to the center of the square, climbed onto one of the weathered benches, and took a deep breath. "I know what you all think of me," she began, her voice trembling slightly but growing stronger with each word. "I know you remember what happened all those years ago. And I'm not here to deny it. I made a mistake. I was young and foolish, and I ran away with someone I barely knew." She paused, her eyes sweeping across the faces in the crowd. "I regret what I did," she continued. "I hurt my family, and I disappointed this town. But I'm not the same person I was then. I've worked hard to make amends, to live an honest life. And I don't deserve to be judged for something that happened so long ago." She spoke of her remorse, her struggles, and her hopes for the future. She acknowledged her mistakes but also emphasized her growth and her commitment to being a better person. She spoke from the heart. She wanted to show them she was sorry. She wanted to be free. The following week, a terrible flu swept through Harmony Creek, leaving many people sick and unable to care for themselves. The town's doctor was overwhelmed, and the local pharmacy quickly ran out of medicine. Panic began to set in. It was then that Sarah's knowledge of herbal remedies, something she had learned from her grandmother, proved invaluable. She knew which herbs could soothe a cough, reduce a fever, and ease aches and pains. She gathered these herbs from her garden and the surrounding fields, brewing teas and creating poultices for the sick. She worked tirelessly, going from house to house, tending to the ill and offering comfort. Her knowledge and skills were a lifeline for many in the community. Even Mrs. Higgins, who was among the sick, gratefully accepted Sarah's help. As Sarah cared for them, the town saw her for who she was. They saw past her past and saw her heart. As the flu subsided, the townspeople began to realize how much they had misjudged Sarah. They saw her kindness, her compassion, and her willingness to help others, even after they had treated her so poorly. They realized that her past didn't define her, and that she was a valuable member of their community. This event allowed them to see her as a person. It was her time to shine. With the town finally seeing Sarah for who she truly was, Jedediah knew that their love was stronger than ever. He watched her as she laughed with the children at the school, helped the elderly carry groceries, and tended to her garden with a gentle touch. He knew that he wanted to spend the rest of his life with her. One sunny afternoon, Jedediah took Sarah to their favorite spot on the ranch, a hilltop overlooking the valley. He spread out a blanket, and they sat together, enjoying the peaceful view. He took her hand and began to tell her how much she meant to him. "Sarah," he said, his voice filled with emotion, "you are the kindest, strongest, and most compassionate person I know. You've shown me what it means to forgive, to believe in second chances, and to love unconditionally. I can't imagine my life without you." He knew he wanted to spend his life with her. He knelt down on one knee, pulled out a small velvet box, and opened it to reveal a beautiful diamond ring. "Sarah, will you marry me?" he asked, his eyes shining with love. Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes. She had never dreamed that she would find such happiness, such acceptance, such love. Yes, Jedediah, she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. Yes, I will marry you. They were finally going to be together. They would share their lives together. The news of Jedediah and Sarah's engagement spread quickly through Harmony Creek, carried on the breeze like dandelion seeds. This time, however, the whispers were different. They were filled with joy and congratulations. Mrs. Higgins, humbled by Sarah's kindness during the flu epidemic, was among the first to offer her apologies and best wishes. She even volunteered to bake the wedding cake, a gesture that symbolized the town's acceptance and forgiveness. Other townspeople followed suit, offering their help with the wedding preparations, from sewing the dress to decorating the church. The town square, once a place of dread for Sarah, now buzzed with excitement and activity as everyone worked together to create a beautiful celebration for the happy couple. Sarah and Jedediah were overwhelmed by the outpouring of love and support. They realized that Harmony Creek had finally opened its heart to them. The town was happy for them. The wedding was a joyous occasion, a testament to the power of love, forgiveness, and second chances. As Sarah walked down the aisle, her eyes met Jedediah's, and she knew that she had finally found her place, not just in his heart, but in the heart of Harmony Creek as well. It was a great day. A few months after the wedding, the Harmony Creek Harvest Festival arrived, a celebration Sarah had avoided for so long. This year, however, she stood proudly by Jedediah's side, hand in hand, as they walked through the bustling town square. The townspeople greeted them with warm smiles and genuine affection. Children offered Sarah flowers, and neighbors stopped to chat, sharing stories and laughter. Sarah felt like she truly belonged, like she was finally home. Jedediah squeezed her hand, his eyes filled with love and pride. They were so happy together. As the sun set, casting a golden glow over Harmony Creek, Jedediah and Sarah stood on the stage, overlooking the crowd. They had been asked to say a few words, a symbol of their acceptance and integration into the community. "We want to thank you all for your kindness and your forgiveness," Sarah began, her voice filled with emotion. "We've learned that love can conquer anything, that second chances are possible, and that even the smallest of towns can have the biggest of hearts." Jedediah smiled and added, "We're proud to be a part of Harmony Creek, and we're excited to build our future here, together." They were a family, and they were loved. They knew their future was bright. They were going to live on the ranch forever. Years passed, and Jedediah and Sarah built a beautiful life together on the ranch. They expanded the operation, always treating their animals with kindness and respect. They became active members of the Harmony Creek community, volunteering their time and resources to help those in need. Sarah, once an outcast, became a beloved figure, known for her compassion, her wisdom, and her unwavering spirit. She taught the children about herbal remedies, helped the elderly with their gardens, and offered a listening ear to anyone who needed it. One day, Sarah received a letter from a young woman who had made a mistake similar to the one she had made so many years ago. The woman was struggling with shame and judgment, and she didn't know where to turn. Sarah, remembering her own pain, reached out to the woman, offering her support and guidance. She wanted to help her. She shared her story, her struggles, and her triumphs, showing the woman that it was possible to overcome adversity and find happiness again. Sarah became a beacon of hope for others who had made mistakes, proving that everyone deserves a second chance, and that love and forgiveness can heal even the deepest wounds. They were able to help each other through their pasts. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Jedediah and Sarah sat on their porch, holding hands and watching the fireflies dance in the twilight. They had faced adversity, overcome prejudice, and found love in the most unexpected of places. They had a bright future. They knew that life wouldn't always be easy. There would be challenges and setbacks along the way. But they also knew that they could face anything, as long as they had each other. Their love was their strength, their solace, and their guiding light. They looked forward to a future filled with laughter, love, and the simple joys of life on the ranch. They dreamed of grandchildren playing in the fields, of sharing their wisdom and their values with future generations. They knew that their legacy would be one of kindness, forgiveness, and unwavering belief in the power of love. As they sat there, bathed in the warm glow of the fireflies, they smiled, knowing that they had found their happily ever after. They had built a life filled with purpose, meaning, and most importantly, love. Their story was a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit, and a reminder that even the most broken of hearts can be healed with love and acceptance. They were finally at peace.